So it's a great pleasure to welcome William Bloom. William Bloom is an old friend of Findhorn's. He's been coming here since at least 1976. And for about 10 years, he used to teach to new people into the Findhorn community. He used to teach meditation and attunement. In fact, you actually taught me meditation. You probably don't remember this. You taught me meditation at Alternatives in St. James's many, many years ago. He was also a pioneer and founder and director of Alternatives at St. James's Church in Piccadilly, London, which has seen hundreds of inspiring speakers pass through its portals for many, many years. He's now the founder and director of the Spiritual Companions Trust, an educational charity focusing on a holistic and person-centered approach to spirituality and health. And he's actually pioneered through that trust the creation of the first vocational accredited diploma in the UK in practical spirituality and well-being, which he's teaching right now here. So thank you also for taking time out of the course to come to be with us this evening. And he's written 26 books, including The Endorphin Effect, and books about practical spirituality. One of the books that I recommend to a lot of people is this little thin book called First Steps in Spiritual Practice, which I think is really brilliant. And he's just an old friend of our communities, and it's wonderful to welcome him back. And I often think of William as someone who takes spirituality and makes it bite-sized. He kind of takes spirituality and turns it into very practical. This is what you can do on a daily basis to improve your life, to generate well-being, and to connect with something beyond yourself. And who better to talk to us about the future of spirituality, religion, and meditation than William Bloom? Please give him a very warm welcome.
That was a very warm introduction, thank you. And thank you for inviting me, thank you for hosting me. This is work in progress. It's a small subject, isn't it? This particular slide is up now and will be up at the end of the talk, and it's the notes for the talk. What you need to know about me to start with is that I'm irritatingly upbeat, irritatingly optimistic, and that informs this talk. But what you also need to know about me is that I come from a family of immigrants and refugees. Both my parents, who came from families of immigrants and refugees escaping various political persecutions and pogroms, had then spent 3 years in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. And I was born to parents that came out of that kind of background, and they were pretty cynical about the human condition. They were realistic about the human condition, so I was brought up in circumstances that were real. And in the middle of all that, I was also having my own experience. From the age of about 4 or 5, I was just going, and it was in the middle of London, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. And it didn't require me to be out in landscape, it just required me to be looking out of the window at the blue sky and thinking, well, that could be the blue of God's eye, couldn't it? Yet at the same time, although I had this, and anybody who's lived with me will know that you can wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning out of a deep sleep and I'll be in a cheerful mood. But in the middle of all that, because of my parents, because of my background, I also have a realism about the human condition. And I remember, I'm going to show you a photograph now which confused me at the time. This particular image is of a group of monks watching another monk who, in the middle of the Vietnam War, self-immolated, set fire to himself in order to make a political point. It was a very, very famous image. It's too shocking for me to show you the photograph of him actually burning. But this is a reality check on the human condition that caught me very early on, which was how come there was this beauty and wonder to life, and there was this particular approach to religion and spirituality talking about deep compassion, deep connection, and there in the middle of it was this type of a situation. It was very confusing. So my background also includes doing doctoral research into why people go into war singing. Why do they go into war happy? Why are they going into war with music before they may get killed or they may kill? And this image is about human attachment. So here's a lovely woman living in a village, and she has a moment where she has an instinct to be quiet. And she leaves her home with children, she goes and sits by a stream, shuts her eyes, leans against a tree, and finds the silence self-soothing, easy, beautiful. And she goes there and does it every day and becomes an instinctive, natural meditator. And a friend of hers spots her and goes, "Oh, what's she doing?" And goes and sits beside her and says, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, I've just found this is really lovely to sit beside a stream and be quiet." And her friend says, "Well, can I do it?" And her friend says, "Yes. Why don't you just lean against a tree and just notice the noises of the river?" And her friend goes, "Oh, that's nice." And then her friend invites another friend to come and do it. And her friend invites another friend, and it builds up. And we have a school of meditation now where you have to sit out in landscape with your back against a tree and listen to the water. But somewhere else on the planet, there's another woman who's suddenly had enough of her children and her family. She needs to take some quiet as well. And she goes out of the house and goes sits somewhere very quietly. And she's tense and she's had enough. And she goes, starts to breathe. And another friend sees her and says, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Look, I'm sitting quietly, it's really good for me, and this is what I do with my breath in order to chill myself out." And her friend says, "Well, that's a great idea, I'm going to do it as well." And she calls another friend in. We now have another school of meditation, which is about 100 miles away, where they're using breath in a certain way. And over here we've got another school of meditation where you have to sit beside a tree. And what's happened is the little ducklings have attached. They've attached to their idea of how to do it. And throughout religion and spirituality, you can see exactly the same problem. I like to focus particularly on men's hairdos. Somewhere along the line, there's a guy who has a great mystic experience. He has lots of hair, and because of the way the monkey mind works, he interprets it as, "Oh, my hair is like an electric antenna, so everybody in his group now has to grow long hair in order to catch the God vibes." But somewhere else, there's another guy who's decided, because he's going bald, right, that the only way you can catch the God vibes is if you've got a bald pate. And there's somewhere else on the planet where someone's put a ponytail on top of their head so that God can pull him up. And you have these attachments. And it's the attachments, it's the primal urge to attach to that has created the challenges in religion. And I name this as being a very poignant part of the human condition. Here is the beginning of the optimistic perspective. The World Values Survey, which interviews tens of thousands of people, has shown that in societies where there's social and political control, ignorance, fear, and hunger, fundamentalism grows. In societies where there's education, political freedom, and safety, you get a different approach to spirituality, which is generalized, diverse, inclusive, expansive, and holistic. The good news ignores the temporary crisis we're in, and it puts it in the framework of 10,000 years. Go back 5,000 years, no Christianity, no Buddhism, no Islam, no Hinduism as we know it. We don't know what it's going to look like in several thousand years, but what we do know at the moment is that all the religions that are the global faith communities reflect patriarchal structures. They are mainly men. They have a top CEO, middle management, lower management, oi polloi. Churches, temples are similarly constructed. They can powerfully manipulate the way in which people attach. So when you have the image of the beautiful goose followed by her little goslings, you have the same thing happening in religions, but in a structured way where the power is manipulated to hold the people and move them forward. But when patriarchy starts to deconstruct, when people are educated, when people are psychologically secure, there's a key word, psychologically secure, then things start to shift. These are just the changes over the last 15 years. Okay. Those changes extrapolated forward 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years, take us back into this. And we immediately have a very clear picture that builds on everything we've been talking about this evening, is if things are cared for, if people feel safe, and people feel safe is part and parcel of being in a safe environment, then they move forward into a space of personal self-management, autonomy, maturity, self-responsibility. This is good news. The challenge for us as a species is to balance out attachment with the usefulness of community. If I am anywhere on this planet and I have got nothing to eat and I'm on the streets, I will go to a temple, a church, a synagogue, a mosque, and I know that I will get some care if I ask for it. So there are huge benefits to community, which traditional faiths nurture. And we have to work out that particular equation. I like it. I like it because it describes the human condition, and it describes how each of us, whether it's the Findhorn community, the Christian community, a wider community of Greens, socialists, we have our attachments. At the same time, we need to be able to individuate out of them and yet use the community as a form of self-nurture and campaigning. Emphasis. As we move culturally and socially into a frame of mind that has psychological security and therefore can explore with mature autonomy spirituality, we see what we at Findhorn, for example, are very familiar with, choices in how you do spirituality. Dance, yoga, meditation, food, singing, caring. In the program we've developed, for example, in the Spiritual Companions Trust, we do something which is very normal, which is we ask people, in what circumstances do you most easily connect with the wonder and beauty of life? We don't tell them how to do it. We ask, how do you do it? Where do you do it? And what kind of style do you do this in? Are you an introvert? You're an intellectual? You are recluse, a radical, a purist, a psychic? What is your style? And we build on what a person's natural and individualistic approach to spirituality is. And you need to hear this. In situations where people feel safe, this is what is normal. It's normal to explore. If you like wine, it's not normal to just stay with one type of wine you taste. If you like music, it's not normal to stay with one type of music. You explore different types of music in order to understand what touches your heart most, what you want to explore, what you want to deepen. And spirituality is similar. It's not something to be boxed in. And we're seeing this happening all across the world, to the irritation of people who are deep in their own faith communities. They look at us, accuse us of being a supermarket approach to spirituality, a smorgasbord approach. But in actual fact, it's a mature, autonomous, self-responsible, self-managing exploration of spirituality and religion in general. And it is a profound and important step forward. The beauty is there. The major criticism that traditional faiths accuse of is that we have no roots and we have no ethics. And that accusation comes often and with force and sarcasm and some venom at us. And I would say back to them, one, we plait together, we intertwine the ethics of all the world's faiths so that they are not in competition with each other, but they are unified, woven together to make an even stronger ethic where there is absolutely no disagreement about love thy neighbor, do not kill, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself, the golden rule. It's plaited together so it's stronger. Two, secondly, we belong to the first generation where mass society as a whole is beginning to adopt green ethics and a deep understanding that our relationship with the earth is not just to do with sustainability, not just to do with the future of humanity, but is to do with our community, with all living things. So we have the plait of all the world's religions. We have green ethics. More than that, we have another set of ethics, and we are the first generation to push this one through, emerging out of all the developmental psychology of the last 100 years, is the absolute clear understanding that babies, children, teenagers, adults, older people need love and affection in order to develop healthily and in order to create healthy societies. And love and affection is not a sentimental option that religionists or emotionally sensitive people may put forward as a poetic idea, but is a fundamental need in a healthy and balanced society. So you have the plaiting of the ethics of the world religions with the green ethics, which are also to do with love of the green community, and then the explicit psychological insights that come out of what we know that people need in order to develop and create healthy societies. And then fourthly, there is a metaphysical ethic that we know about. And the metaphysical ethic is, you can't get away with a bad vibe. And I say to those flat earth scientific types who say there's no such thing as vibes, I will say to them, when you rented or bought your home, your flat, your apartment, did you not check out the atmosphere of the place? And they go, yes, of course I did. And I go, yeah. You know, if your partner or your teenage children come home in a bad mood, do you not feel it the moment they walk in the door? And they go, yes. And I go, fine. So we bring in there will be a normalization of a certain type of metaphysics which recognizes the linking between thought, emotion, consciousness, mood, and how that affects other people, and the notion of what's called social contagion in social sciences, that our moods affect other people, will be mapped out in terms of our vibes. So we now have 4 clear, deep sets of ethics: the platting of the world's religions ethics, deep green love for the community of life that we're part of, and an absolute necessity to give each other love and affection, because that's what we need to develop and create a good society, and have a good vibe. All of this, I know, is part and parcel of what people in our community almost take for granted. But you need to realize that it's new, it's cutting edge, and it's the homeopathic taste of why all will be well. All will be very well. So that's me.
Thank you very much, William, again for your clarity and also for simplifying things, but in a way that's also really grounded in a lot of experience and a lot of depth and a lot of wisdom. And I actually want to take a moment just to thank you for standing for this movement, if you like, in the UK. I think you're one of the people who's done most, if not the most, within the UK to really stand for and articulate what holism and what this kind of spiritual movement, we might call it the New Age movement or holism or however you want to language it. You've done a lot to kind of really stand for that and to articulate that and to argue for that. And I just want to really honor and appreciate you for that. I think you've done a great job for many, many years.